Hi, I'm Dave Solberg, technical advisor for RVTravel.com. You may have seen some of my Ask Dave articles that are on the newsletter, and I do a Monday through Friday. We're going to do a live version of that now, and we've got a question that came in. I've got Chuck Woodbury is in the background here. I'm going to bring him up. And Chuck, what question do we have?
This came from a reader named Lana in Joplin, Missouri, and good question. She says, "Dear Dave, I just bought my first RV, a Keystone Springdale travel trailer. I'm concerned about the water pressure at campgrounds. I've heard horror stories that too much pressure can damage the water system. Are there ways I can keep that from happening? And do I need to be concerned?"
Well, that's a great question, Lana. And yes, you do have to be maybe not so much concerned, but just be aware of the pressure that's out there. A quick little story. My folks bought an RV and they went down to visit my brother in Arkansas. They plugged into the outlet and they hooked up to the outside faucet. They came out about 3-4 hours later and their entire floor was soaking wet inside their RV. He had about 70 PSI pressure on that outside faucet. And none of the lines burst, but none of the connections could hold that much pressure. So it just seeped out and soaked that carpet. So you do want to check the pressure in it. Now, what pressure you can handle in your RV kind of depends on the lines you have, the piping you have, and the connections. The old style RVs would always have what we called the mobile home type piping, and it was the beige or the gray, real small, 3/8 inch. Almost everybody has gone to PEX, this type here. This happens to be one of the larger ones, and right on this, it's stamped 80 PSI. And I'm going to bring up a slide here to show you. Now, this is a PEX one with a PEX connector, and this is kind of the weakest link in there. So even though the lines can do 80 PSI, the connections are what you need to look at. This one will do about 40 PSI. Now, a lot of your RV manufacturers have gone to this 1/2-inch PEX, blue and red for hot and cold. And then these here are little clamp-on connections. They'll hold a lot more into that. You see some of these RV manufacturers that will put a label on that says 60 PSI max on there. And so that's something you want to look at, what type of connections that you do have. And it's easy to do. You open up this as a service center on a fifth wheel. And so you just open that up and you see that connection. If it's got the crimped on size, then that's going to hold a lot more. But, check to see. And a good rule of thumb is to keep in mind when you're at an RV park, typically they're going to be on a well system, meaning they've got a pump that's going to pump it from a well up rather than a municipal type water system that is regulated. The closer you are to that well, the higher the pressure is going to be. So what I typically do is I put in this automatic, and I'm going to drop this here for just a second, and I'm going to show this is a 40 PSI automatic regulator. So I don't adjust it. It doesn't go higher or any lower than that. It's just a straight 40 PSI. I put it on the faucet with a filter right behind it. Now, one of the things you can do if you do have the PEX and the crimp-on style, you may want a little more pressure than 40. So they do make this style, and there's a couple other ones like it, but it has a dial that will allow you to adjust that pressure higher so that you can get to 60. And that means that you can get more water pressure in your shower, better water pressure in the sinks, the faucets, that type of stuff. So the next, I'm going to go back here one more slide. And this is something I get a question a lot about. And you may notice I put a filter on this. And so I get the question, people say, well, do I need a filter at my campground source? And I always use a filter because keep in mind, not only the pressure is important, but you're going to have hard water. Very few campgrounds are hooked to the municipal that has treated water. So you're going to have calcium, you're going to have rust, you're going to have lime. All that stuff will plug up faucets, the strainers, the water pump. I typically don't drink the water from the campground source. I bring my own with, but I don't want that hard water and all that calcium plugging up everything that's in my system. So number one, check your pressure, regulate it. Number two, it's a good idea to have a filter.